Expedition mode is one of my favourite features in Legends of Runeterra, but it can be confusing to know which picks to choose and what type of deck to craft. This video will look at my top 5 tips for Legends of Runeterra Expedition mode, followed by a detailed guided example. Hope you enjoy. This video was done in collaboration with Bomber TV, so please be sure to check him out. First up, you get to choose a champion. Even though it sounds obvious, focus on the champion itself rather than the supporting cards that go with it. Look for a champion that suits your playstyle and make sure you have a good understanding of how the champion works and the support cards that work best with it. If you can't decide between which champion, then look at the secondary focus, which is obviously the supporting cards with it, and see which complement the champion card best in your opinion. On non-champion picks, don't just look for a specific card you like. You have to evaluate the strength of all 3 cards offered combined and pick that, even if this means losing your favourite card. From time to time, an exotic card will appear, so make sure that it fits in line with your deck's theme and champion's theme, and don't just pick it because of how rare it is. This strategy will result in a stronger deck overall. However, there are exceptions to this rule. For example, if you're lacking in early game, you should prioritise picks that focus on the early game over necessarily the strongest cards. The first pick determines what your starting region is based on the strongest champion of the first 3 offered. After this, you have 3 paths: mono region, bi region, and even tri region, and all 3 have their own pros and cons. Mono regions are very effective at following a very specific game plan, like for example mono Nocris aggro or mono Piltover and Zorn puff caps, but they're also very predictable and not versatile, so you're not going to be catching your opponent off guard with these type of decks. On the other end of the spectrum, tri-region decks are very versatile and unpredictable, and as you in theory have access to triple the amount of removals and tricks, and your opponent won't know what you have in your deck. But of course, they lose a defined game plan, and more often than not, they're just value cards. Bi-region takes the best aspects from both mono and tri-region decks as an ideal middle ground between the two. When going bi-region, keep in mind different synergies between the regions, and in general most regions do synergize more with one region over another. For example, Freyord and Bilgewater for plunder, or Iron and Noxus for aggression and elusive. On the second pick of the champion, I would suggest picking a champion that best aligns with the region combo, rather than picking what necessarily might feel like the best meta champion at the time. The first thing to consider when playing Expedition mode is to consider which tricks you're going to encounter, as these are your most value generating cards in this game mode. This obviously comes with experience and practice, but take a quick look at the cards in your deck and work out what you're going to use to catch your opponent off guard, and not simply the general game plan. Look more specific at how you're going to win. One of the most important things are burst spells, so these are tricks like Riposte, Transfusion, or Fury of the North. Use these to get an instant edge over your opponent and win some combat that would put them in an extremely unfavourable position. The next set of tricks to consider are removals, like Mystic Shot, Nox and Favor, and Make It Rain. It will quickly become obvious what the key cards in your opponent's deck are, so use removal on these cards to gain the upper hand. Remember, in Expedition mode, there's going to be a less natural deck style, so if you do take out a key unit, it will be way more valuable than it would be in the normal game mode. Finally are the surprise and big swing turn cards, like Relentless Pursuit for example. The amount of times you can think ahead and throw a surprise rally can basically just win you the game. So if you have a mid-range deck for example, this could be your win condition in Expedition mode, and there's plenty other examples of this in Legends of Runeterra. So now I want to call what I refer to as bombs. So effectively I've just listed all the different removals and tricks, and obviously the targets you use these on are just as important as having them in your deck. And now I'm going to talk through a few examples of what I mean. Champions are probably the first targets, but there are also certain targets that should be removed first. For example, Heimerdinger should be removed immediately, and champions like Teemo and Kalista should also be targeted really quickly before they level up. Other champions can be removed through combat tricks, as they are commonly used for blockers and for value trades, so like Sejuani or Gangplank. So you should keep removals for the first type of 3 champions I mentioned, and use combat theme tricks for the second kind like Sejuani and Gangplank that I just mentioned. So your big tanks that rely less heavily on like key effects such as the first 3. The next priority is cards that you should be playing around, and identifying what these are comes with experience. But here's a few examples. So if you're playing against Demacia, expect a Citra the Bold on turn 6, so play units which can block her. Against Bilgewater, expect a Riptide Text coming on turn 8. So while champions can be seen from the start, other threats are more likely to be hidden in the deck. Obviously you don't know which boss monsters that aren't champions are going to be in your opponent's deck. But again, you can learn that these are going to be coming and save removals for these targets. So don't just rely all your resources onto destroying their champions. Knowing your win condition starts from the beginning of the draft. On your first 5 picks, you should be choosing the best cards offered and choose the best pairing of regions, obviously when the second champion comes along, if you don't decide to go down the mono route. So obviously you should be familiar with the best meta decks at the time you're playing, so these can be a good indication of the regions that maybe you should be aiming for. From the 5th pick onwards, you should then start to focus your game plan. If you are a Demacia Noxus deck for example, and the 8th pick of your curve peaks at 3 mana, you should probably go for aggro. If instead the mana cost in your deck peaks around 5, then you're going to be looking more at a mid-range deck. Another example is more effect themed, so if you're going for puff caps, go for cards that stall the game, so that it will take more turns to draw out the cards, and effectively more puff caps will be able to deal more damage to your opponent. So that's the kind of different things you should be thinking of when choosing your cards. After the draft, in the games you should stick to that game plan. So Noxus Demacia aggro, aggressively mulligan for 1-drops and a nice curve. So you should be doing the exact same thing you should be doing in normal mood. But for some reason Expedition mood, people tend to try different things, they seem to be more experimental. So just stick to the normal game plan is my tip here. If you've gone for a mid-range deck, you can start to curve from around turn 2 or 3. And obviously start identifying the cards that are going to make you nicely ramp to that mid-game peak. And obviously you need to be considering the bombs that you're going to be using to get the upper edge when you do go for that peak. Lastly, if you do go for the kind of more control puff cap route, then you should obviously be keeping your puff cap activators. So these will deal as much cheap damage in the early game and then stall out with value trades and removal and let the puff caps do the work. So this is just one example of an effect based way that you can take Expedition mode. Obviously there's so many different other ways to do it, but obviously just think of that win condition and do it that way. So now we're going to look at a guided example, and I'm going to try and explain why at each stage I chose the cards I did, so you have a good understanding of the reasons why you should be choosing cards and which ones to pick. We're looking at champions first. Maokai is not that strong in Expedition mood, so we're going to pass on him. Draven's okay, but so is Teemo, but I feel Teemo comes with a stronger package of other cards, so let's go for him. Kalista, Darius and Zed are all solid picks to be fair. As we've already chosen Piltover Zorn, we can expect a lot of removal cards to come, or some puff cap synergy since we have Teemo. If we go into Shadow Isles, we could be in a control deck full of removals, but our champions would not have as much value, as they're rather aggressive. So instead we're going to go for a burn strategy. Both Noxus with its aggressiveness and Iona with its elusiveness are great options. As Zed has a better package, let's go for him. But obviously this is quite a tough call here, so this is a good example to talk you through. So this is simple. You see removal, you pick it. Also it comes with a great body. This is another tough call, but we're going to ignore the Bilgewater package as it's not worth committing to Tri-region at this stage, as these 3 regions don't have a much common theme between them. The other 2 are pretty even, but now we have more focus on the burn strategy early thanks to the elusive, and then the final burst from puff gaps and spells. So the third option is more synergistic with this strategy, even if the first pick is probably better overall if we're looking at like meta cards and that kind of stuff. This is again a pretty simple pick. Removal is an instant pick. Also it comes with a body which synergizes well with our burn strategy. This is a weak choice to be fair. It's not worth committing to Freljord. Yon's a bomb but does not synergize with our game plan. Patrol Wardens are aggressive, and Thermogenic Beam, although it's not the best one, is still a good removal option, so let's go for that. Usari is elusive and effectively a kind of a bomb, but it comes with Spirit's Refuge, which although is a really good trick, it's actually pretty expensive and the lifesteal does not synergize well with our strategy. Plaza Guardian is also a bomb, but it comes with removal, which is a spell, and obviously synergizes with the theme we're going for, so that's why I've chosen this one. Again, a really easy pick. Removal and burn and a nice body, that's why I chose this one. Oh, this is easy. Another easy pick once again. Final burst of burn and an aggressive body. This is exactly the kind of thing we're going to be looking for. How many mystic shots is too many mystic shots? There's no such thing. Go for as many as you want. Also, it comes again with nice burn and nice bodies. This is tough, as Usari and Green Glade duo are elusive and aggressive, but now we're very much invested into spells and puff caps. So let's continue with that and let Iona just be a splash to let our opponent think about more tricks than he needs to. So a very strange pick here. This is again pretty tough. Green Glade duo is obviously very aggressive and Will Iona is an amazing utility card, but at this point it's all into the mystic shot, so that's where we're going here. Okay, so now maybe going for another mystic shot is a bit too much, as we need some actual bodies to be able to compete with on the board, and the first pick is pretty solid, whilst also synergizing with our burst game plan. This is a weak pick, but the last burst of damage from the Fiery Blade Scout and the synergies with spells from Eager Apprentice are probably the way to go here. None of these trades are worth it in my opinion. If they don't synergize more, are not stronger than the cards offered, just don't go pick for them. Don't just feel because you offered the trade that you have to pick it. There we go guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I know this took a slightly different format to my usual videos, so I'd love to hear what you thought to this format and whether you'd like to see something similar again. I thought I would stay away from meta decks until the new region, as effectively any videos I did make will become dated very quickly. The next video I'll be making will involve ranking all the new champions with their support cards, from worst to best. I will then also make a top 10 and a deep dive into the new meta decks with the Targon release, so please subscribe if you'd like to see some of this. Please also check out Bomber TV for more detailed content, as he's a Masters tier player with far more game knowledge than me. Thank you very much guys, hope you enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.